Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful. I'm in the studio today, finally getting to work on my volume 2 of my Bodhi journal. I know, shocking, right? So I have been spending the year bouncing around between multiple projects, and I'm wanting to start new things, but I don't want to start too many new things when I still have so many unfinished projects. So I decided I'm going to set my mind to getting moving on this volume 2 journal. So if you're just joining me for the very first time, welcome. If you haven't been following along, last year I started this journal called my Vintage Grunge Journal series. And I knew at the time that I just wanted to do something vintage, very neutrals, and grungy. So I did this one, and it started getting so big that I had a suggestion from someone to do a volume 2. I had decided to use this format to do a journal I'd been wanting to do, something with photos that I had taken of a ghost town called Bodhi. And so that's kind of the inspiration behind what my theme was going to be for the journal. And when I started it, I ended up doing each signature represents kind of generic ghost town, a different building. And so I did 3, a home, the schoolhouse, and a church. And I know this is probably redundant if you've been following along in the series, but it had been such a long time since I picked it up. I actually watched back my last episode of this volume 2 so that I can kind of see where I had left off. So I'm going to put links down below for, I'll do for this one and for the previous one in case you didn't watch it. And that'll kind of give you an idea of what I have been working on up to this point. So hopefully I won't be too repetitive for this one. Like I said, I watched the last video back just to kind of see where my head was at. And luckily I had started using these 12 by 12, I think they are. Well, they're a little bit bigger than that because they hold 12 by 12 paper packs. And so I had grabbed these for my ongoing projects that I wanted to set aside for a while so that I could kind of keep everything together in one place and just grab this bin if I wanted to take it with me to work on it in the other studio. So I'm really glad I did that because it was really easy to kind of pick it up and find all the parts and pieces that I had been collecting for this. So if you are just joining me, so far on this one, I had covered making this cover. I think, I don't recall if I had actually done the cover on camera for this one, so it was kind of nice to try to duplicate it, and that way you can see the exact process because I wanted them to look like a volume 1 and a volume 2. So I'm going to put that aside. I don't need that today. I had decided also that I would be working on this journal with the signatures not sewn in. And the reason being is I like to do some stitching sometimes, and I don't know where that's going to be. And it's easier to do it if I'm going to stitch on an actual page, before it's in the book. So I continue to work on this off camera. That's kind of how I like to work anyway. And then maybe just do a video when I feel like I have something new or creative to share instead of just kind of same old thing. I try to come up with new ideas, and sometimes that takes me a long time and a lot of experimentation how to do something. But I will show you a few things in this one, how-tos, and then I also like to share my mistakes. So that way, even though you didn't get to watch me make them on camera, I can kind of share. That way you'll know that I did try something else and it just didn't work out as well. So the other thing that I am doing as I'm working on the journal, and it's kind of the way that I did the last one, I have a little bit more experience now making digital kits, but at the time I was really brand new to it. So the way that this kit for this first volume is put together, this one may end up being a little better, I hope. I had wanted to include a lot of the things that I had made myself, to be able to include them so that you could use them in your journal, because they were kind of maybe unique little parts and pieces that I had done. So that's kind of what the last kit is. This kit's kind of going the same way where I'm working on it while I'm working on the journal, and I'll kind of show that as I go along. I'll maybe need something for my journal, so I will create it and then include that piece in the digital kit so that, you know, you can use the same parts and pieces, but yours will end up looking different just because your style is maybe a little bit different and maybe you only use part of the parts and not everything. So I'm also working on that, and I'll kind of give you sneak peeks as I go along in this one, because again, I needed some things to continue working on this. In the first, I've shown this already, and these may change a little bit because now that I have learned more skills, to make it look cohesive, I may, you know, change like the background color or something like that. So this was a page that I had done and I've shown it before, so I'm not going to go into detail of it. But I've been working, and this one I had also worked on. I made a little change to it, and then I have a couple of new things that I just did in the last couple of days. So I had already started, this is the Mercantile signature, and so I had already kind of started with the actual front of the store photo that I had taken, you know, the entry to that building. And then I kind of thought of this as what kind of things, it's kind of a general store. So this town was there from the 1800s, but all the way until the 70s. So, you know, it evolved over time. But I thought of, you know, that general store feel where you'd find everything you need there. So I kind of am breaking each little, you know, page spread into maybe who's shopping and for what. So it started out with kind of the woman, and because I had this, you know, front part of the store, I had left this to be a little pocket. So I've just added a little, I found this online and I found it before I joined the Graphics Fairy. I'm not sure where it came from or if it's a free thing, so I won't be putting it in a kit because I don't remember where I got it, and I altered it but just a little bit. So this is just a little like a grocery list sort of thing. So I just thought that would be fun to stick in the front there. And then so that was an addition. This I had already covered in a previous video. As well as this, I didn't do any more to this card, but I had this large one, and in the last video I hadn't attached this yet, and I'll show you as I go further. But I don't always attach everything. Like if the back half of this was going to be a pocket, which it is, I wasn't sure if I wanted to sew or do anything on it before I attached it, so I hadn't done that in the last video, but now I have. So it's kind of just a little flappy page there. And I intentionally, the page that I used was from an 8x8 pack. So I only had, you know, this much width, and I decided since this was going to be a pocket on this side, I would use the shorter side as my little writable space. And then I held back this little corner tuck. I held it back so that it wouldn't interfere with this page. And then I'm using this little pocket thing that I'll show you kind of to hold this down too. So it's kind of a layered thing. If you watched, let me get this out of my way here. If you watched the last series, you know this whole thing about seeing through windows and doors and kind of that sort of feel, because that's how you visit Bodie. You don't get to go in the buildings. You just look at everything from doors and windows. So I wanted the journal and this volume also to kind of still have that feel of things through to other things. So, you know, it's kind of, I've used a lot of vellum see-through things, but then I want kind of like you only see a peek around a doorway or something like that. So this card I did do a little addition to. I had already made it kind of a double pocket card. So it's cardstock in the middle, vellum on this outside part of the pocket, and then just a tea-stained paper on the back side. So I needed something to put inside. So I went ahead and I made this little, well, this card, the back of this card is like a pre-made Tim Holtz card. And I had a set, and I don't know the name of the set, but it came where there's some longer ones and then some square ones and then some really small ones. It was like they're already cut with rounded corners kind of set. So I grabbed one of those, and it was too long, but I liked the width of it to fit into this pocket. So I decided to just trim it and then use the part that I trimmed off as belly band. So it's kind of multi-pockets and with still more tucks and things. So the card was Tim Holtz. I just used Distress Vintage Photo the Distress Oxide, just to age my edges. And then, like I said, this is the part that I cut off, and I guess I cut it off the top. And then I just used it as a little belly band, gluing it on the edges. And then this is just a little tag. I'm not sure that in his little ephemera packs where you get little labels and different things, it came out of one of those. And then this is a Tracy Fox card. I printed it onto just paper, so I backed it with another little digital of just some water stain. I just shrunk it down so it would fit that size of cards. And if I recall, I think that came from Eva at Bohemian Crafting. She has like a lined paper kit. And then I just shrunk some of them so that they would fit on the back of little cards. This little tab, I do actually have that in my shop. I had a request to do some of my things. If you saw the last video, it was things that I just put in my Etsy shop. And one of them are these file folder tabs. I don't have one of those whale punches that makes your little tabs. So I had designed quite a while ago my own pattern for my own, after the actual shape of a file folder tab, and then just did them in different sizes. So there's 4 different sizes, and they're in my Etsy shop. So I used one of those, and they were, when I cut them out of some coffee dyed paper or cardstock. So I used that and then just used my vintage photo to color it up even more. And then the cute little stamp came from Darkroom Door Rubber Stamps. I'll list this down below also, but it just has a lot of different stamps for this kind of project. So that was that, and that's that little card. So that was a new addition. Nothing new here. I've covered this before. And then on this side, this is a super fun thing I want to share, and I did not come up with this idea. I wish I had. If you've watched a few previous videos ago, I was printing on some different things, different types of paper and envelopes and that sort of thing. And this is along that same line. And I want to share, I had to write her name down because it was somebody that I didn't know. It was just kind of a video I stumbled onto. And her name is Cheryl Talifus. I'm not sure I'm saying that correctly, so I apologize. But I'll put her link down below for that video of how she did this. But I'm going to kind of also show you. I always try to kind of maybe do a spin, something different on, if it's not my idea, at least try to change it up a little bit. So I'm going to share, you know, kind of where I took it for this little corner tuck. And then this is actually a scan from an actual deposit book that I have that's super cute. And so I made it a size for a card here, but I altered it even from there. This was my original scan that I used to make some cards, and I was going to use this one, but then I decided I needed to, or wanted to, since it was my own vintage scan, that I could share it in a digital. And so when I did that, I ended up altering it to fit this project. So I'll kind of show you that too. So for this little part here, which is super cute, let me show it up close. It's actually a doily that's been printed on. And I just happened across, like I said, just a couple of days ago, I saw her video and I just thought, oh, I love that. And it was when I was just starting to think about working on this journal. So for me, if I see an idea and I don't try it right away, I'll forget it, that I even saw it, and to go back to it. So I wanted to try this right away and see if I could incorporate it into this project, and it worked out perfect for there. So I'm going to show you real quick what I did. And like I said, I'll link her video down below, but it's super easy. And I did it a little bit different because I wanted to do my own experiments. So I'll show you the first one that I did. So she had used vintage wallpaper for her, what she was printing, and I liked that because I had just made, I think I might have mentioned it or shown it, a sneak peek of it in one of my last videos. I was creating the last digital kit that I worked on. I ended up making up this sort of wallpaper collage that I maybe was going to use, and I don't honestly remember if I even used it in that or not, but this is actually part of that collage. I did it this direction. So when I printed this one, I just wanted to share, it's cut off part of it because it actually goes this way. But I kind of like that. When it's a collage, it can go either way, depending on what you're going to use it for. If you're going to fold it in half for a folio and the flowers kind of went this direction, you might want it to go the other way. So I printed this one on some of my tea stain cardstock just to see, because if I'm going to use them, if I'm going to do it on cardstock and I'm going to be using them for cards, then I like to do it on something heavier and that maybe has a dyed background already so that it's not plain. You could also print on that too, you know, some kind of muted, one of my B-sides that I call them. So that's just so you can kind of see the pattern that I was working with. Printed this one onto some rice paper that I had coffee stained, and I thought this would be fun. I decided if I'm going to print it again and again, this one has a little bit alteration in the color of it. I had forgotten to turn my photo enhancement off when I was printing it through my Epson Plus so that I could go borderless, and I forgot to turn off the photo enhancement, so it did. And then this one, you know, you do it as you're printing on thin paper, so it comes out much lighter, but I thought this would be fun to cut into strips and then use it like as washi tape, you know, put sticky on it. So this is, I just wanted to show you that the design was created in this direction. I just love that though. And then I printed it the other direction, so it really only printed that part of it. So this may end up in this kit, I'm not sure, and I'm showing it to you because I'm going to address it again in here and then again later on in this volume 2 because I used it again. So printing on doily, okay, super easy. She had done it just on plain copy paper as if this was going to be a throwaway kind of deal. Kind of like when I'm printing on fabric and I do it on sticker paper, or if you're printing on tissue and you're attaching it to a piece of copy paper to run it through your printer. My printer has a thin paper setting, so like rice paper and tracing paper, it will actually feed it without having to attach it to another thicker piece of paper. But a doily, obviously you can't feed this through your printer, so you kind of do the same concept. You attach it to a piece of plain copy paper. In my case, when she was showing her result, her end result, she pulled it off the paper and you end up with this negative sort of thing. And I love that because that you don't waste anything. You could fold that in half and that's, you know, goes into a signature. So I wanted to attach it to whatever I was going to run through my printer with intention, how I laid it out, what kind of paper instead of just plain copy paper. So this one I have, I don't think you can even see it in the camera, but this was one of my coffee stained papers that is copy, just cheap copy paper. It was that recycled. If you watched the video a few videos ago, it was the elementary recycled cheap copy paper that I bought at Walmart. And so I decided I would print it onto a coffee stained piece. That way I have background color already. And then it just gave you that vintage kind of feel. You take your doily, and in this case, I had a large rectangular one. Here's another half. So you can see this was just a regular one. You can use any kind, and round works, you know, any kind of shape. And then what Cheryl did was she had taken glue stick and she had the purple one. This one's clear, so you can't really see where you're getting it. And she had actually taken the glue stick and put some onto a slick piece of paper or something, or you could do it right on your mat, and then just used her finger to just get around the edges of the doily, because you want it tacky enough to stick to your paper, but not too heavy. And like I said, she was using the purple one so you could kind of see where you were at. I am not that patient to go and, you know, do it that gently around the edge. So I actually just kind of did a quicker thing. And one thing, this one's actually reminding me that because I want to use the negative space piece of paper, you might want to make sure you have all these little things out of the holes. You know, this was just done with the machine, and so some of these are little stragglers. It's not that big of a deal. It's just you might see them on here. So just get your doily, and because I am not as patient, I actually just took my stick, and instead of putting it on something, you can either just take it with your finger off the top and do that, or I was even lazier, and I actually just went around real quick because this was faster to get it on, all the way around my doily first, and then I made sure I didn't have too much by just kind of going like this, and then I know I'm smooshing it around and everything, because you want every little piece to have some glue on it. So once you've done that, I'm not gonna show the whole bit. I wasn't too worried about too much because I knew I had a trick for getting it back off of here if I had put too much glue. So just imagine this is all laid down here, and you want to make sure and go like this and just make sure every little bit is stuck down. And if it's not, you put a little bit more glue and make sure you don't want anything sticking up at all. Okay. When I print any kind of paper for crafting and junk journaling, I'm always using my back feeder because I'm always switching what kind of paper I use. And sometimes it's thin, sometimes it's heavier. I just find it easier and less things to have to go through in your printer if you do it from the rear feeder. If you do it from the bottom feeder, you know, it's kind of coming up and around like this. And I just think it's quicker to go like that. I don't think it changes the speed of your printing. I just don't worry about little things getting jammed in there. So I can watch what's happening, I guess. So I use the rear feeder, which means mine's going to kind of come through just like this. So I do it with the doily side up. Then you just run it through your printer on a regular setting, whatever kind of paper you're using. And then as soon as it comes out, you just pull this up and take it off. And then you have this really pretty, totally usable negative one. And then you have your printed doily too. And then the other thing that she did that I thought was kind of a fun idea, like say you're just going to use this, you know, as a page in your book. You could leave it just like this and you know, they'll collage on it, write on it, whatever. This one has lots of perforation in it, which I kind of like the texture. But Cheryl had actually backed hers with like book page or something so that it was really kind of collaged onto another page. So it would kind of be something like that, you know, and then that's your page in your book. So that was my first one that I did. And then I thought, how fun would it be to do it on, this one's a little bit heavier paper. Actually, this might have been on newsprint because it seems pretty thin. I might have done this one on coffee stain newsprint. And then this is just on the cheap paper, coffee stained paper. And you can see where my paper, because it had been coffee stained paper, I had a little thing got folded over. So that's a little thing that can get trimmed off. But this was with little round doilies. So same thing, you just put the little glue stick, you know, and stick them down. But I decided, since I was going to print these, I wanted to kind of do a layout so that I would like the negative space and all that was left, because I think this would just be cute as a, you know, a page in a journal, and you can, you know, write on these little spots, you know, have that to write a little quote on or something. And then again, being on coffee stained paper. So it's like even the negative toss away part was laid out with intention. So I took, you know, one round one here, and I thought, well, it'd be fun to have maybe a couple of round ones that could be like a pocket or like a little corner tuck. So I went ahead and cut the second doily that I had in half, put half here and then the other two corners. That just made my pages interesting, this piece. And then I have all of the printed pieces also that were here. So that's what I use to make my corner tuck in my journal. So that's kind of a fun thing. And then I got, you know, a little nutty and wanted to try some different ones. So I decided to use my collage, and that way I would have kind of more of a variety around the edge. And I really like how that turned out. So again, this was just on some coffee stained paper, and even the texture, I don't know if you can see this on camera, but that doily has a lot of perforated texture in it. And that even transferred ink through those little holes, those teeny tiny holes, so that you see that texture on this too. And I don't know, you can even kind of see a little bit of the floral, you know. So it actually, because this, I don't know if you could see my hand through there, but because it's almost like a screen, ink went through that. So I really just love how that turned out. you know, and then I can, you know, I can decoupage this onto something, or this one's even pretty just to see the back side because of all the ink that you still see through. So I just love how this turned out. So I see a journal in the future that is going to be maybe vintage wallpaper themed or something. And then that's when I got the idea, turning my design. So in this one, you can see my design goes this way, and that's the way that the digital was designed. But then I turned it the other way too. So you just get a little bit different of a look. So I just love these. And then I took another, this was from Graphics Fairy again, and I just altered the color of it for myself. But it was one of their bookend papers. And I just thought that would be really pretty as a background, you know, and then you can add things to it. So I know I've spent a lot of time on this, but I'm just excited to, you know, do something new. I didn't come up with the idea, like I said, but I do want to use those negative results also. Now, when I went to put it into my journal, that was another story. So I needed it to be a little thicker than just a doily. I was afraid just a doily, it would be just too flimsy even to put something little through. And I really liked the idea of seeing through all the little, you know, seeing that it was a doily, seeing through all those little perforated holes. So my first attempt was to back it with book page like she had, but I wanted to poke through all those holes, and I made the mistake of the first attempt using a tiny hole punch, thinking I was just gonna, you know, punch them all, but I don't like how perfectly round they are. So then I took my little pokey tool, you know, for my book binding things, and this little pad, and then I just started kind of poking through them all. And I liked that better, but I had already made these holes, which I don't like. So if you want, you know, it to be really kind of rough and rugged looking, you can just poke through that book page. And then I actually took a sanding block from the back side, you know, because when you poke a hole, the paper has to go somewhere. So it's really kind of just on the back. And so I just sanded that off so that you kind of would see through those holes a little better. I wasn't really happy with how this whole thing turned out, so I had to think up another idea. And that was to use acetate, and I put the doily through my sticker maker. I just ran this through my little Xyron sticker maker, and it wasn't too thin, it worked. You know, sometimes like tissue paper and things like that, it's too sticky and you have a hard time getting it off of the backing, which is this. This is the backing from it. But it works with the doily. And so you just peel that off, and then I just stuck it onto some acetate, and it stuck, you know, it stays on there. But then my problem was gluing this onto my page. I didn't think it would stick, but I went ahead and did, not on this actual one, but I did it on just a piece of book page, just to see if you know, every acetate's different. Some of them are ones that had something that you peeled off of. So it's kind of like wax paper. It's not intended to stick to anything. So gluing it down, you know, wasn't going to really directly to my page. It just kind of peeled up. So this one I had actually stuck onto a book page and peeled it up. So I thought, well, what I need for it to stick better is along this edge, I need it to not be this acetate, but paper, so that I have somewhere to glue to my paper. So paper to paper, because this is not going to stick. So my idea, and you know, this doily had sticky backing on it, and it's sticking, you know. So I kind of wondered if maybe, you know, double-sided tape, there may be some that are strong enough that those would work, but I don't have that. So I just decided to try the paper. So I did a strip, and I don't have one to show. I ran it through my sticker maker, but then I put 2 little strips of paper on the edge, and then the acetate in the rest of it, if that makes a little sense. So then I had to trim that, you know, make sure I had paper and then acetate that would stick down, and that worked. So I don't know if you'll be able to, I don't know if you'll be able to see, but you can kind of see my paper just through this edge because I wanted it to go all the way up to the edges. So there's 2 strips of paper, and that way I could just use my art glitter glue and glue that down, but you can still see through the perforations because it's acetate in that part. And then it was sturdy enough to hold my little piece of paper. This is probably going to be a card. I found that when you see the rest that I've added to this, I found that when I got through to even my next pages, this page was getting so chunky, I had to kind of thin it down a little bit. So I kind of took, like this was a card, I have it just a piece of paper. I took a couple of pages out of this so it wouldn't be quite so thick, that sort of thing. So that's where I'm at with that little deal. This is what made it super thick. Oh, before I move on to this, I had another idea because this was kind of a pain to do because I had to put the little strip of, have no acetate to here. It was kind of a little trimming pain. So I thought another alternative, if you don't want to do the see-through, but you still want to highlight the fact that this has a design like lace, you need something darker behind it. So when I had done the book page, it all kind of blended in too much. So I thought, well, how about black cardstock? So that way you see the contrast of all those little holes, which is kind of what I was after. So that could have worked too, especially with the dark buttons over here. That would have been cute. But I really wanted to try and see if that would work to do just the paper on the edges. And it did. Okay, so moving on, this little coin envelope was demonstrated in the last video of this series, so I won't do that. But it was blank on this back side, and a few videos ago, I did a bunch of little vintage button card things. And so I had some that I had just left on fabric and didn't put onto a card yet. So that was perfect for this because I didn't do anything else to it. It was already grungy. I liked the colors together, and so I just glued that little piece of fabric to the back of that coin envelope, which is kind of just another little flappy thing. And then I already had, this was already there. And I'm going to leave this blank because it's writable space. But I just, I like to add as much additional writing space as I could. So I had this little scrap of vellum from Tim Holtz. And then I had just some other little scrappy pieces of paper. And so I just tore them into 4 pieces. And then I just added this for the sake of adding it, just that little bit of fabric to see through there. And then I tied it with some kitchen string that I had rusted out. So I just did a little 3-hole pamphlet stitch. And then I'm just attaching it with a little rusted paper clip that I did a little curly Q on the end. And that's cute there. Okay. So then my next one, when I watched my video back, I had mentioned that my next pages I thought would be fun to do, like kids in a candy store sort of thing. And that kind of, I like how it turned out, but at first it was kind of hard because I didn't have any vintage toy or kid things, and I didn't really find anything that was speaking to me. And I needed color a little bit, even though I'm trying to keep this really neutral because it's candy, and so it needed to be a little bit colorful, but not too much. So I tried to keep it simple and just keep the color to the candy. So my idea for the candy was, I know I'm probably dating myself, but when I was growing up, we had a house down probably a block or so away, and there was a woman there. Her name was Jeannie, and her front room was a candy store. So it was like, really, you're in a neighborhood and it's her house. And she used to sit back in the kitchen and watch soap operas all day. So you could hear her back there when you came in. There was a little bell on the door. But her entire living room was set up as a candy store. And so little toys and little things like that too. But it was, back then, you could get penny candy. And so there would just be boxes and boxes and boxes of little penny candy. And so it would be so much fun because, your mom could give you a dime or a nickel and you got to go and pick out your candy. And she always put them in these little Glassine bags. And so I thought that would be fun to do, like a little bag of candy. for my journal. So I made the little glassine bag. I've never bought them, but I recently did some envelope style ones. Just a real simple, easy way to make them. So I wanted to show you that, and then I'll show you the candy that I did for the inside. So if you don't have any glassine bags, you can use tracing paper. And the last ones that I did, I used the envelopes when I did the vintage envelopes. This is a previous video. I used coffee stained. For this one, I wanted it to look like an authentic, candy bag. So I just wanted to use tracing paper that's not, colored in any way. So for the tracing paper that I'm using, it's just a pad that I've had forever. I'm almost out, but it's just this Strathmore tracing paper. You can get it, any hobby store or Amazon. So I'm going to just take this, and then I just, didn't even really think about it too much. Maybe if I go this way, they're a little thinner. But maybe this way I can get 2 out of it. So it doesn't really matter what size. I'm going to actually do this in 4ths, and that way I can get 2 bags. So I'm going to leave one side, the fold, and then I'll just tear. That way I can get 2 bags out of this one sheet. So that's my basic start to my bag. And then I need is if I line it up, if I hold my ruler, I'm using the grid, and I'm using my metal ruler. If I do that, then I get a straight line. So it's kind of scoring it first. Now I don't need it to be that thick, but it doesn't need to be this wide. I should have used my ruler to begin with. So I'm gonna do it on the bottom. So then this will be the bottom. Same thing if I line it up on my grid, and then I go over just like 1/4 of an inch, then I should be straight. So I'm gonna go just use my fingernail, run it along the ruler, and that makes my score line, making it straight. Okay. So now what I need to do is I just want to trim off this part. So this one's wide enough, it'd probably be easy enough to tear or use your scissors, either way. Okay. And then I need to get rid of this corner. And then I need to get rid of this entire flap so I can kind of even. And again, you could cut it or tear it either way. Since I'm doing a grunge journal, I've been mostly tearing things. Okay, so now I have my 2 little flaps. And that's where I'm going to put my glue. And just glue that. And now I have my little bag. So I'm just going to use my glue stick. Now, tracing paper kind of curls, so I actually don't do it like this, and then because then it starts curling. I found it easier when I was doing all those envelopes if I just pay attention to where my edge is, so I don't go too far, so I don't go glue where I don't want it. It's better like this because now it's curling already, you can kind of see, but at least I'm already in the position I kind of need to be in. Flatten that out a little bit. So that's it, super easy bag. And then you can just take your ruler and make sure that you're kind of use that to squish it down without sticking to the other side. And then if you want to notch it like I did, it's really hard to notch, something that thin. So what you would do, what I did, was I took like a piece of cardstock or something. We'll try book page. And I actually folded it over both sides so that I had 2 pieces. This is easier so I could see what I'm doing. Find where my center is, sort of. Which is about here. And take my little circle punch. And I'm just kind of eyeballing where I think the center might be. But that way it won't get jammed in your thing. So see, then I have my little bag. Okay, so that's how I made the bag. And then I just used some vintage photo to kind of just grunge it up. And then I used a cute piece of tape just to kind of bring in a little bit more color. This is just some washi tape. And, you know, it's kind of bright. So I used my vintage photo and got it kind of aged looking first. So I just used a little washi tape. Sometimes you have to put a little glue on it, you know, so that it'll stick because it's pretty low tack. And then on this side, I didn't really want to see the flowers. So I just used some of my tape that I've shown before that I've aged. So this is just satin gift wrap tape, just cheap whatever brand. I stick it to the backing from my shipping labels. I just save these and then, you know, put the tape and then use my vintage photo just to kind of make it look like old yellow tape. That'll get all cracked and icky. And then this is a stamp. I have a set of vintage, actual vintage letters and numbers, and this is a stamp that was in that. So just use that. And actually then this is 2 of the stamps from my vintage kit. That I just did on that piece of paper and stuck that on there for my penny candy. So you see my envelope's a little bit bigger. So it doesn't really, you know, I could trim it down, whatever I want to do. Just make up a bunch of these and then you'll have them on hand. So that's for my envelope. And then for my candy, I don't really have, you know, a lot of papers for that kind of thing. So I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I hope I have my paper pad. Let me grab the paper pad I use. So I went through my little scrap box to see if I had any kind of scrapbooking papers that were stripes. And I did find this one that I'll show you how bright it was. So I was looking for things that would be candy color, and they're very bright though. So this was just a little piece of 6x6 or whatever it was, scrapbook paper. And I love the colors for candy. I thought that was perfect. But I was thinking, you know, like peppermint stick, it's on the diagonal. So I just cut some strips on the diagonal so that they would look like these little twisty things. So that was that one. And then I had this, I think I got this probably at Walmart, either that or at Michael's, probably Walmart. But it's just all these different colorful kind of watercolory looking papers for the whole rainbow. So I just grabbed a circle punch. You can see where I punched some. And I just went through and found a section that I thought looked kind of candy and used that. So that was all I had for kind of the right colors of paper that would look like candy. So I just, you know, did some different size circles, cut those out. I didn't back them with anything because it's kind of a little heavier cardstock. This was thin paper, so I did back it with just some scrap cardstock. So I have all these circles and I had these little things, and I took my vintage photo and aged them because I don't want them so bright. And then I took some embossing, clear embossing powder, and this is just your regular old, nothing fancy, clear, transparent embossing powder. And then my embossing pen. And I also used the clear one. And then you'll need, if you've never done embossing, I learned that this is kind of handy. This is just, you can either use like baby powder or cornstarch or something like that. This is just in a little sock with a rubber band. You can buy these little, I forget what they call them, but these little pouncy things, but you can see it's just powdery in there. That way you won't get them powder where you don't want it. So you just kind of powder your piece first and then use your embossing pen and round and round and round. And actually I think what I did on this before I did the embossing powder was I wanted it to kind of sparkle like sugar covered. So I used my Sheer Shimmer Craft Sparkle Spray. I use this all the time. So if you've watched any of my videos, you'll see. I just spritz this on it and it just gives a nice light sparkle. You can see this was the paper my scrap paper that I was using. I don't know if it is showing. That it's just a really super fine sparkle. I don't know if you're seeing that or not, but anyway. So in real life, you can see it. It was easier to do this before the embossing because trying to spray it over embossing, it doesn't dry as fast. So I sprayed it first. Then I did my clear embossing pen, and you can see the swirls and then the little star shape kind of thing. So I just wanted to make it kind of look more like candy. So just do that and then, you know, sprinkle your powder. I'm not going to show this because I've done it a million times, but if you've never embossed, it's super easy. You know, just pen, powder with a paper underneath so that you can dump the excess back into your jar before you turn on your heat gun because you don't want blowing everywhere. So I kind of, because I was doing a whole bunch of these, I had all my circles. They were already sprayed with this and dry. So I went through with the pen and then I would put the powder on it, knock it off. When you have used this, that's super easy. You hit this first before you do the pen or anything. And that way it's only where the swirl is. And then I set it aside. So I did all of those before I turned the heat gun on. That way I could get my powder back in the thing. So I did stripes on the twisty one just to kind of differentiate. Just sometimes it was between two colors and sometimes it was just on one just to space them nicely. And then the swirls on the circles. And then you just take a heat gun. And I was asked recently, what's the difference between using a heat gun or a hairdryer? And it's how much it blows. So some things, you know, a hairdryer will work for, but it blows too much air. So a heat gun, there's lots of different shapes. I have this one here, was a Martha Stewart one that I had way before I ever did this. And then since then I also have the Tim Holtz one that looks more like a hairdryer, but it just doesn't blow as much air. It's just kind of drying things. So you just hit it on that and it immediately you'll see this swirl, this shinier color. So you could do the same thing. There's other products, but they may take longer to dry. I like using embossing powder because it's fast. So then I just kind of filled the bag with my little candies. And, you know, I kind of did an arrangement instead of just putting all the candy in there. I wanted them to be kind of useful for journaling. So I may add like a little quote here, but then you have space you can write on and things like that. But combining them kind of made more writing space than if I had just left each little individual thing. But I thought it'd be kind of cute, you know, maybe put, you know, cute words, just little words. So that's my little candy idea. And then I needed something. I'm kind of holding this all together because for me, I like to see what's through, you know, what's on the other side kind of deal and how everything lays on top of everything else. So I wanted something kind of behind here because it was a little bit plain. And I found this in one of my Tim Holtz packs. There were our pages, and I don't know if I have part of one here. I don't think so. I think it's in my book, actually. There are some pages that are like vintage advertisements. And it'll be like a whole 12 by 12 page of that. So I found in one of those, I found a little thing for a kittygram. And so I thought, well, that's cute. That's for kids and it's old. So it just was a little square card. So I just notched it so it would, and just glued 3 sides so it could be just a little pocket. And then just to add again a little bit of that candy color. I thought that was cute because that's like a child's shoe size. So I just kind of stuck that in there. And then again, doled all that, even this ticket, everything down with my vintage photo just to dirty it up. I don't want it too bright. And then I wanted children, since I had the woman and the other one, I wanted some Tim Holtz paper dolls or something like that. I had this page, is the back side of this one. And this was this page was a Tim Holtz paper. again, because it just had that vintage Mercantile sort of feel to me. It had one side that is like this hardware inventory sort of thing. And then this side was kind of the garden seed kind of thing. So I thought that would actually work out well for my Mercantile theme. So I just have a little bit of flap of that was going to capture whatever I wanted to tuck. So I went ahead and glued that down. But I had found this in my ribbon junk pile. This was actually a little piece of vintage all wrinkled up satiny kind of ribbon. And so I thought it was really cute because, you know, I wanted ribbons and laces and different things like that. You know, a little girl in the store, she wants to maybe buy a ribbon for her hair or something like that. So I just glued the ends down inside before I glued this down. And then I found this little vintage photo that I had printed on cardstock. And then this was just a ticket. Again, probably one of Tim Holtz's tickets. I'm not sure. And then I just made a paper clip with one of my rusty paper clips and then a scrap of that candy thing just to make it be a little paper clip. Just to decorate it up a little bit. And then I wanted something else that was kind of plain, and this is all pretty plain, which it's still, you know, writable space. But I wanted, you know, something, and I had found that I hadn't used one of my circles for my candy. It wandered off my table somewhere, and then I found it, and I thought, oh, it can be like a red ball. And I remembered I had this children's book page, and it was about what can I play with. I can play ball with the big boys. And so I thought that was super cute with that little Tim Holtz paper doll. And rather than, you know, glue it on there, I was going to originally just stick this piece of paper in there, but I thought it would be cute to make him sort of like a little pull-out tab. So I only glued him to half the page. That way I could still fold it in half. And so he can still, you know, be collaged on. But then I made that like his little red ball. So I thought that was cute. I like that. So I kept it simple, but with a little bit of color and, you know, some writing space. And then this one I haven't done too much yet. I had already, you know, this was made from manila paper, this page. I actually had some of this as a center, but again, my signature was becoming so chunky that I needed to kind of minimize what I was doing. So instead of having it be a page in here, I decided I would fold up some pieces and make it into this pocket. So the pocket was made out of one of my digitals. This is in my Rustic Textures kit that's in my Etsy shop. And it's a coffee grain sack, a coffee sack that I use to make the pockets. And then this is part of the kit that I'm making for this journal. This is a little thing that you can get in there. And so I just added it and sewed it around on my sewing machine first and then glued it down 3 sides. I went ahead and just glued it down 3 sides so that it could be a pocket on the pocket. So it's kind of a layered pocket. And then this was just one of Tim Holtz's little things that I put in there. And then I'm going to make some cards. I haven't done anything to them yet, but they'll just kind of go in there. And then another paper doll, and I like kind of having things overhang the pockets and pop up above them sort of thing. So just put him in there. I may, you know, embellish this up some more with some more details, but this is where I'm at. And this, I wanted to kind of show that's how I work, is I might start with the basic, and then I just kind of keep adding more and more detail to it. I'll come back to it later. And, you know, it's just like this. I thought I was maybe done, you know, I could have been done and left it how it was in the last video, but I came back and I thought, no, I want something here. So that's just kind of how I work. Same with this, you know, I flip through and I'm like, nah, it kind of needs something. So that'll probably happen here. But then I moved on, you know, I didn't have it calling me yet. So I just turned the page because I wanted to glue this little flap down. I needed to kind of decide what I was going to do here. So this is the back side of this manila one. And I had already put this, if you've worked with manila paper, like just manila construction paper, it can be kind of fragile when you fold it. So I like to sturdy up my spine. And this one was perfect because I used some washi tape that was, you can't even see it on this side because it's under here. But it was like the months and then days numbers are on the other side. But I kind of like that for the garden. This is kind of the garden page. Because you'd buy your, your farming and that kind of thing. You'd buy your seeds there. So this little corner pocket, again, this, I actually didn't show this one in this video, but I've shown it before. This was the piece that I used, for the front of the pocket. This was the pocket for the sewing section. These were, used in there also. This you're going to see in a minute, but then I also had this. So these are all photos that I took of things that I have, and then just tried to use them as, have them available to be embellishments. So this will be part of the kit, and that's this bucket. But as you can see, it looks like a photograph. So if you're, depending on the style of your journal, you may like that it looks like a real photo. But I wanted to grungy it up and have things look old and beat up. And this just looks a little too pristine, even though it's an old barrel. So I had printed it out, I think, onto just some cream cardstock. And then I just used some of my different distress oxides. I have on my table Vintage Photo, some Ground Espresso, and then I have Walnut Stain in the ink because I don't have it in the oxide. And I would just take, a little bit of this and put it right on my table and then spritz it with water and then drag my piece around in that and just kind of on the edges and get it all over. And that's just kind of how I grungied that little front piece up. It was pretty, you can see I had left this edge on. When I used the Vintage Photo the first time, you see how yellow it is. When you get Vintage Photo wet with water, the yellow really comes out of that ink. And I liked it, but it was so yellow. I wanted to bring in those other colors so that I would get some of this darker, dirtier color in it. And then I also still wanted this is kind of a paler yellow, but I wanted something to break that up. So I took another piece of my burlap. This was burlap from the same Rustic Textures kit that I have. I took a piece of that, and you can see the color difference. This is actually the same paper. I just rounded the one corner like I did here. And then I used, I believe, both the Ground Espresso and the Walnut Stain, just to get that a darker, different color, more like the banding on that. I wanted it to kind of set off of the page as a corner thing and not be so pale, I guess. So that was that. And then I needed some seed related items. So I went on to my trusty Graphics Fairy and found a few things that I could alter and use in a kit. So this was actually something from somewhere else. And so I took this digital and used it for the background. I thought more of it might show. And when I'm creating these kits, there are maybe multiple iterations. And in this one, I think I was missing this piece. So I actually had some of the collage showing more that you could cut those pieces and use. So I may do a blank if there's enough room in the kit. This collage as just a blank with not either very little or nothing on it, so that you can cut parts of it and use, because I just love that how that turned out. But I decided to go ahead and use it as a backing for this. And the fun thing about that was I could change the opacity of my seed packets and of my papers so that you could see some of that collage through there. So I really kind of like that. So what it did was it gave you another pattern on top of that lined paper, which I thought was really cute. So I've just kind of layered some different things so that I could include those in a kit. So that's going to be a sheet. It may change again a little bit more, but I'm kind of liking how it is. So I printed it because I was playing around on a couple of different things, and I should show this just so you can see the difference. So this is that same one. This was the first practice run of my collage, and I printed it onto coffee stained paper, and it came out this color. And then same exact thing, I didn't change the color of it, but I printed it onto a lighter tea stained paper instead, which is almost white. You can see the back. So this was coffee stain, this was tea stain. So it comes out still that vintagey feel, you know, to it, but you can see the difference in the color. So it just depends on what what you want to use it for, what you need it for, and which one you choose to use. I kind of like the darker one, I think. Oh, actually it goes up here. And then this is just like a little, melon advertisement kind of thing. So I really like this. I didn't want to cover it up completely. I mean, I could make that a pocket, and something goes in it. But I also kind of liked just clipping them on because they're so writable on the back. So I'm just using one of my aged little clips here and just clip those on. And then I'll probably turn these into cards unless it's getting too bulky, and because these are writable and they're already tea stained and coffee stained on the back. So just a couple little seed packets. So that's kind of the garden-y thing. And then I'm getting into more of the hardware and actually, food kind of things, but people had gardens. And so really a general store would have, your grains and your dry beans and coffee and that sort of thing, all your dry goods. But people gardened, so your fresh things, you really weren't there. So this is going to kind of be that, I think. This is, again, one of the pieces on my kit. And I thickened it up with some heavier cardstock and just fussy cut around it and then just glued two sides. But I really like how that is. So I still need to make a card for that. And then probably going to be getting here close to the end. So I don't know, maybe some more hardware, more food items, maybe some decorate, paint for your house or that kind of thing. I'm not sure. But I did make this a super grungy pocket. So something will go in there. So that is it. That's where I'm at. I know this is probably a longer video, but I wanted to kind of, get back into the groove and try a couple of new things. So I hope you got some good tips out of there. I know I didn't do, much crafting in front of you, but I kind of enjoy, the process more, I think, when I just turn on the music and, kind of see what I can come up with. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Any questions, please put them in the comments, and I will put links down below. Have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.